The Silarus trade station hung in space like a giant metal flower. Its 5 arms stretched out from a central hub, each filled with shops, homes, and meeting rooms for the 27 alien species of the Galactic Confederation. Today, these halls buzzed with extra excitement. Humans were coming. Tae-ho Kim stood straight as the airlock door opened. As Earth's main diplomat, he had trained for months for this moment. Behind him, Jun Park adjusted his glasses nervously. As Earth's top scientist, Jun was more used to labs than to meeting aliens. "Remember," Tae-ho whispered, "they think we're dangerous just because we come from Earth. Stay calm and smile." Jun nodded. "Their gravity is going to feel very light. Try not to jump." The door slid open fully. 3 aliens waited on the other side. In the middle stood a tall being that looked like a walking crystal. Light bounced off its clear body, creating small rainbows on the floor. "Welcome to Silarus Station. I am Ambassador Elix," the crystal being said. Its voice sounded like gentle bells. "On behalf of the Confederation, we greet Earth's representatives." Tae-ho bowed slightly. "Thank you for your welcome. I am Diplomat Tae-ho Kim, and this is Science Leader Jun Park." The alien to Elix's left stepped forward. It had pale blue skin and large black eyes that blinked sideways. "I am Science Specialist Cora. I have studied your species with great interest." The alien's voice shook slightly. The third alien stood back, arms crossed. It looked almost like a large cat standing on 2 legs, with short brown fur and sharp teeth. "Security Chief Braxis," it said simply, not hiding its distrust. Tae-ho felt the difference in gravity immediately. Each step felt like he might float away. The aliens watched how easily the humans moved. "Your ability to function in our standard gravity is impressive," Cora said, walking beside them. "Your world has 1.5 times our standard gravity. It must feel very strange here." "It's like walking on the moon," Jun said with a smile. "But we adapt quickly." Braxis made a sound like a snort. Adapting to different gravity is the least concern when dealing with Deathworlders. "Braxis, please," Elix said sharply. Then to the humans, "You must excuse some caution. Your Earth is classified as a Class 12 Death World. The conditions there would kill most Confederation species in minutes. Our history and evolution made us what we are," Tae-ho said calmly. "We come in peace." The group entered a large round room with a table in the center. Around it sat representatives from 12 different species. Some looked almost human. Others were completely alien. One appeared to be a floating cloud of gas, another like a giant insect. "These are the council members who will decide if Earth joins the Confederation," Elix explained. As the meeting began, Tae-ho presented Earth's case. He spoke of human history, culture, and technological advances. He carefully avoided too much talk of wars or violence. Many council members asked questions. Some seemed friendly, others clearly afraid. "Is it true humans can survive radiation that would kill most species?" asked a small green alien. "Some radiation, yes," Jun explained. "Our cells can repair certain types of damage." "And you eat dead plants and animals. You actually put deceased organic matter in your bodies?" asked another, sounding disgusted. "We have evolved to get energy that way," Tae-ho said politely. "They are predators," Braxis said. Their eyes face forward like all hunters. The meeting continued for hours. Tae-ho felt they were making progress with some members, while others remained suspicious. This was just the first of many planned talks over the next few days. After the meeting, Elix showed them to their quarters. The rooms had been specially adjusted for human comfort with stronger gravity plates in the floor. "Tomorrow we will discuss trade possibilities," Elix said. "Rest well." When the aliens left, Tae-ho sighed deeply. "That went better than expected." "They're terrified of us," Jun said, sitting on a chair that felt too soft. "Did you see how they flinched when I reached for my water? Fear can be overcome." We need to show them humans are more than just strong bodies from a dangerous world. The next day brought more meetings. The humans met with trade representatives, cultural experts, and military officials. Most seemed cautious but polite. Security Chief Braxis followed them everywhere, watching. During a break, science specialist Cora approached June with many questions about Earth. "Is it true you have liquid water falling from your sky?" Cora asked, amazed. "Yes, we call it rain," June explained. "And solid frozen water too." "Snow, yes. Don't you have precipitation on your worlds?" Cora's skin changed to a lighter blue. "Some worlds have gentle mists, but nothing that would crush you or freeze you. Your world sounds terrifying." "It's actually quite beautiful," June said, showing pictures of Earth on his tablet. Cora leaned forward, fascinated but still keeping a safe distance. On the third day of talks, Taiho felt they were finally making progress. The Council seemed less afraid, more interested in what humans could offer the Confederation. The main meeting room was full. All 27 species had representatives present for what might be a historic vote on whether to continue formal relations with Earth. Ambassador Elix stood to address everyone. "Today we consider the application of Earth to begin the process of joining our..." A loud alarm suddenly blared. Red lights flashed around the room. "What's happening?" Taiho asked, standing up. Elix's crystal body flashed with concerned colors. "Station alert. Something is wrong with..." A violent shake ran through the station. Then, suddenly, Taiho felt heavy. Very heavy. The artificial gravity had increased sharply. Around the room, aliens collapsed. Their bodies were not made for this gravity. The crystalline forms like Elix cracked and fell. The gaseous beings compressed painfully. Even the stronger species like Braxis struggled to move. "Gravity malfunction," someone shouted. Taiho felt the pressure too, but after a lifetime on Earth, he could still stand and move. Beside him, Jun was already at a control panel. "The station's gravity generators are overloading," Jun said. "The safety systems have failed. This gravity will crush most of these species in minutes." Taiho looked around the room. Aliens were crying out in pain. Ambassador Elix lay on the floor, crystal limbs cracking. "Can you fix it?" Taiho asked. "Not from here. We need to get to the main engineering section." Taiho nodded. "Let's go. Braxis, where is engineering?" The security chief was on his hands and knees, struggling to breathe. "Central hub. Level 3. But you can't." "We can," Taiho said firmly. He turned to the room. "Stay calm. We'll fix this." The two humans moved through the heavy gravity, helping aliens who had fallen in the hallways. It was hard work, but their earthborn bodies could handle it. They reached engineering to find more chaos. The alien engineers could barely move under the crushing gravity. "Let me," Jun said, pushing to the main controls. His fingers flew over the alien interface. "The primary systems are locked in a feedback loop. I need to shut down the whole grid and restart." "Will that work?" Taiho asked, helping an engineer who had collapsed. "It has to. Otherwise, the gravity will keep increasing until the station tears apart." Jun worked quickly while Taiho moved around the room, lifting fallen aliens to safer positions. Even for him, the gravity was becoming dangerous. "Ready," Jun called. "This will cause a few seconds of zero gravity, then return to normal. Everything not tied down will float." "Do it." Jun pressed the final controls. The crushing weight suddenly vanished. Everyone and everything not secured began floating. Taiho grabbed a handrail and caught an alien engineer who drifted past. After 10 seconds, gravity returned to normal levels. Throughout the station, aliens who had been crushed now floated gently back to the floor. In the hours that followed, the humans helped the station's medical teams. Many aliens had suffered injuries from the gravity surge. Taiho carried those who couldn't walk. Jun helped repair damaged systems. When they finally returned to the council chamber, they found Ambassador Elix waiting. The crystalline being had cracks across its surface but stood tall. "You saved many lives today," Elix said, "including mine." Around the room, council members nodded. Even Braxis looked at the humans with new eyes. "We did what anyone would do," Tahoe said simply. "But not anyone could do it," Elix replied. "Only beings from a high-gravity world could function in those conditions. What you call normal, we call extraordinary." The council members gathered closer, their fear replaced with something new: respect. "Perhaps," Elix continued, crystal body shimmering, "what makes Deathworlders dangerous is exactly what makes them valuable allies. Today's vote on continuing relations with Earth is unanimous in favor." Tahoe and June looked at each other and smiled. First contact had been made, not just between different species, but between different understandings. What had seemed like weakness to the humans, the aliens' fragility, was normal in the galaxy. What had seemed normal to humans, their strength and resilience, was remarkable to everyone else. The path to joining the Galactic Confederation had begun with a crisis, and with the first demonstration of what humans from a death world could offer to the stars. 3 months after the gravity incident at Silaris Station, Earth had gained observer status in the Galactic Confederation. The first human ship allowed into Confederation space, the HSV Dauntless, now orbited Central Station, the heart of the Confederation's government. Captain Jisoo Lee stood on the bridge of the Dauntless, looking at the massive space station through the viewscreen. Unlike human ships with their practical, blocky designs, Central Station was a beautiful spiral of shining metal and light. "Captain, we have a message from Confederation Council," said her communications officer. Jisoo straightened her uniform. "Put it through." The screen changed to show the crystalline form of Ambassador Elix, who had become Earth's main supporter in the Confederation. "Captain Lee, I apologize for the short notice, but your presence is requested at an emergency meeting. A crisis has developed." "What kind of crisis?" Jisoo asked. "A gamma-ray burst has been detected heading toward the Valurian system. Their homeworld will be hit in 72 hours. Jisoo knew about gamma-ray bursts from her training. They were among the most destructive forces in the universe, concentrated beams of radiation that could strip away a planet's atmosphere and kill all life on its surface. "How can we help?" she asked. "The Emergency Council is gathering now. Your perspective may be valuable." 20 minutes later, Jisoo and Dr. Hyunsong, the ship's exobiologist, entered the Emergency Council chamber. Representatives from 12 species sat around a large table. At its head was a tall, thin alien with pale skin and 6 arms, Council Leader Zenthar. "The human representatives have arrived," announced an aide. Zenthar nodded. "Thank you for coming quickly. We face a grave situation." A hologram appeared above the table, showing a star system with 6 planets. One was highlighted. "This is Valurian Prime," Zenthar explained, "home to nearly 8 billion Valurians. Our astronomers have detected a gamma-ray burst that will hit the planet in 3 days. We must evacuate as many as possible." "How many ships do you have available?" asked Jisoo. A large, muscular alien in a military uniform spoke up. "I am Admiral Praxis, head of the Confederation fleet. We have diverted 87 evacuation ships to the Valurian system." "How many can each ship carry?" "Around 10,000 passengers. We can move perhaps 9 million people in the time we have." Jisoo did the math quickly. "That's barely 10% of the population." The room fell silent. Then a small, delicate alien with green skin and large eyes stood up. She wore elaborate robes and had a crown of flowers on her head. "I am Elder Nala of the Valurians," she said, her voice soft but clear. "My people are peaceful farmers. We have no ships of our own large enough to help with evacuation. We are at the mercy of the Confederation's aid." Dr. Hyun spoke up. "What about underground shelters? If the planet has deep enough bunkers, some people might survive the initial burst." Zenthar nodded. The Valyrians have ancient cave systems and bunkers from past natural disasters. These might protect another 30% of the population, but only if they can be properly stocked and sealed in time. Admiral Proxus looked at a datapad. We face another problem. Initial scans show Valyrian Prime has radiation levels twice the Confederation standard. Even before the gamma ray burst, it's at the upper limit of what most of our species can tolerate for short periods. Jisoo and Dr. Hyun exchanged looks. The radiation levels that scared the aliens were normal for Earth. How long can your evacuation teams stay on the surface? Asked Jisoo. Admiral Proxus frowned. In protective suits, perhaps 4 hours before dangerous exposure. The medical teams say even that is pushing safety limits. Jisoo stood up straight. The Dauntless carries 200 crew members, all from Earth. We can work in those radiation levels without special protection for days, not hours. The council members stared at her. Impossible, said Admiral Proxus. No species can survive such exposure. Dr. Hyun stepped forward. Earth's natural background radiation is similar to Valyrian primes. Humans have evolved with higher radiation tolerance than many Confederation species. The Deathworlders speak truth, said Ambassador Elix. Their medical records confirm this ability. Elder Nala's large eyes widened. You would help us, even though we are strangers. Of course, said Jisoo. We can coordinate with your evacuation teams, extend their working time by taking over when they need to retreat due to radiation exposure. Council leader Zenthar's 6 hands made a complex gesture. We accept your offer with gratitude. Admiral Proxus, please coordinate with Captain Lee. Admiral Proxus didn't look happy, but he nodded. My ship will depart for Valyrian Prime in 1 hour. The Dauntless may follow if it can keep up. 6 hours later, the Dauntless emerged from faster-than-light travel near Valyrian Prime. The planet looked beautiful from orbit, covered in lush forests and wide oceans under swirling white clouds. Hard to believe something so lovely is about to be hit by a cosmic blowtorch, Dr. Hyun said, looking at the planet on the bridge screen. Confederation ships are already in orbit, reported the sensor officer. 12 evacuation vessels and a Confederation flagship, the Unbending Justice. Open a channel to Admiral Proxus, Jisoo ordered. The Admiral's stern face appeared on screen. Captain Lee, you made good time. The Dauntless was built for speed. We're ready to assist with evacuation efforts. Very well. I'm sending coordinates for the primary evacuation zones. My teams have already begun, but as expected, the radiation is challenging. Jisoo gathered her team in the shuttle bay. 50 crew members were preparing to descend to the surface. Dr. Hyun checked everyone's basic radiation badges, not for protection, but to monitor cumulative exposure. Remember, Jisoo told the team, we're naturally more resistant to radiation than the Confederation species, but we're not immune. If your badge turns yellow, that's a warning. Red means return to the ship immediately. The crew nodded seriously. The Valyrians have lived on their world for thousands of years, added Dr. Hyun. They've adapted to their environment just as we've adapted to ours. Treat them with respect. The human teams took 5 shuttles down to the surface. As they descended through the atmosphere, Jisoo saw the first evacuation zone, a large field outside a city with thousands of Valyrians gathering, carrying what few possessions they could. The shuttles landed, and the human teams stepped out into the warm air of Valyrian Prime. A group of Confederation officers in bulky protective suits approached, led by a tall, insect-like alien. Lieutenant Krex, the alien, introduced himself. You are the humans. Captain Jisoo Lee. We're ready to help. Krex's compound eyes studied them. Where are your radiation suits? We don't need them for these levels, explained Dr. Hyun. Our bodies can handle it. Krex made a clicking sound that might have been disbelief. My team must return to orbit in 1 hour. The radiation already affects us, even with protection. Show us what needs to be done, Jisoo said. We'll continue. The Confederation teams had set up processing stations where Valyrians were registered before boarding transport ships. Medical teams checked each person, prioritizing the young, old, and sick. Jisoo worked alongside the alien teams, learning their procedures. The Valyrians themselves were gentle beings, resembling humans, but with green-tinted skin and large, expressive eyes. Many were crying as they left their home. After 3 hours, the Confederation teams began showing signs of radiation sickness, despite their protective gear. Lieutenant Krex's hands shook as he transferred control to Jisoo. "We must return to our ships," he said, voice strained. "Can you truly continue in these conditions?" "Yes," Jisoo assured him. "This is within our tolerance." As the Confederation teams departed, the human crews took over completely. They worked through the day and into the night, processing thousands of Valyrians for evacuation. Elder Nala visited the evacuation zone, moving among her people with words of comfort. When she saw the humans working without protective suits, she approached Jisoo. "Your people continue while others must retreat," she observed. "Is it painful for you?" "No," Jisoo replied honestly. "These radiation levels are higher than Earth's, but not dangerously so for short periods." "What kind of world makes its children so strong?" Nella wondered. "A challenging one," Jisoo said, "but it's home." By the next morning, Admiral Proxys contacted the human teams from orbit. "Your assistance has been useful," he admitted reluctantly. "Evacuation numbers are 12% ahead of projections." "Thank you, Admiral," Jisoo replied. "But we have a problem. The city's power grid is failing. Without power, the underground bunkers can't be properly sealed against radiation." Admiral Proxys frowned. "None of our engineers can work in those conditions long enough to make repairs. The equipment we could send would take too long to set up. We have an engineer who might help. Su Min Kang specializes in radiation shielding." The Admiral hesitated, then nodded. "Do what you can. The gamma-ray burst will hit in 61 hours. As day 2 of the evacuation began, the situation grew more desperate. Confederation ships filled and departed, but for every Valyrian who escaped, 10 remained. The news about the power grid threatened to doom those who would need the bunkers. In the Unbending Justice's command center, Admiral Proxys watched the humans working tirelessly on the surface. He turned to his first officer. "These Deathworlders," he said quietly. "I feared their strength made them dangerous. Perhaps I was wrong about how they would use it." On the planet below, Jisoo organized her teams for the greatest challenge yet, not just evacuating the Valyrians, but saving those who would have to remain and face the coming storm of radiation from the stars. The sun rose on the 3rd day of the evacuation. Only 48 hours remained before the gamma-ray burst would hit Valyrian Prime. In the main city of Velura, Min Park led a team of human rescue workers through crowded streets. "This way," called a Valyrian guide. "The Eastern District still has many families who haven't reached evacuation points." Min wiped sweat from his forehead. The radiation levels had climbed overnight as the first waves of the cosmic event reached the planet. For humans, it was uncomfortable but manageable. For the Confederation aliens, it was becoming deadly. "Lieutenant Krex, your team should return to orbit," Min said into his communicator. "Radiation is above your safety limits now." The insect-like alien's voice crackled back. "Acknowledged. But what about the people still in the Eastern District? Our anti-gravity sleds are the fastest way to move them." "Leave the sleds. We'll operate them manually." There was a pause. "Impossible. Each sled weighs over 200 kilograms when loaded." Min smiled grimly. "On Earth, that's a heavy workout, not an impossibility." When Krex and his team departed, the humans took over the evacuation sleds. Designed to hover using anti-gravity, the sleds had begun failing as power systems were affected by increasing radiation. The humans simply lifted and carried them, loaded with Valyrian children and elders. In another part of the city, Su Min Kang worked with a small team on the power grid. The main generator facility sparkled with electrical problems. The radiation is causing shorts in the control systems, Su Min explained to Governor Sylph, the local Valyrian leader. We need to isolate the bunker power supply from the main grid. Governor Sylph, a tall Valyrian with elaborate markings on her green skin, looked worried. Can it be done in time? Without power, the air filters and radiation shields in the bunkers won't work. We'll make it work, Su Min promised. But I need every piece of lead and dense metal you can find. And concrete, lots of it. While Su Min's team worked on the power problem, Min's team continued evacuations. They found a school where 30 young Valyrians huddled with 2 teachers. The transport sleds stopped coming, one teacher explained. We've been waiting for hours. We're the new transport, Min said, smiling at the frightened children. He knelt down. Who wants a ride on a human's shoulders? The children looked unsure until one brave girl stepped forward. Min gently lifted her onto his shoulders, and she squealed in surprise. You're so strong, she said in wonder. What's your name? Min asked as they started walking. Tyla, the little girl replied. Well, Tyla, on my world, all humans can carry children like this. It's how we take care of our own little ones. The other children, seeing Tyla's delight, quickly agreed to be carried. Soon, Min's entire team was moving through the streets with Valyrian children riding on shoulders and backs. The sight brought smiles even in this desperate time. At the evacuation zone, Captain Ji Shu coordinated with Admiral Proxus via video link. We've loaded another 15,000 Valyrians, she reported. But we're running out of ships. Admiral Proxus nodded. I've called for every available vessel, but many won't arrive before the burst hits. How are the bunker preparations going? Engineer Kang has a solution for the power problem, but we've hit another issue. The main bunker entrance was damaged in the panic. The door mechanism is jammed. Can it be repaired? Ji-Soo shook her head. Not in time. We need to find another way to seal it against radiation. On her screen, Admiral Proxus looked thoughtful. The Deathworlders. He stopped himself. The humans have surprised us at every turn. Perhaps they will again. At the main bunker, Su Min had created a makeshift radiation shield using lead panels from the city's old buildings and concrete mixed with boron compounds found in a factory. This should reduce the radiation to survivable levels, she explained to Governor Sylph. Not perfect, but enough for your people to survive until rescue ships can return after the burst passes. The governor touched the rough shield with wonder. You built this from scraps. Necessity drives innovation, Su Min said. On Earth, we've had to solve problems with limited resources many times. Suddenly, the ground shook violently. People screamed as dust filled the air. Earthquake, someone shouted. The tremor lasted only 20 seconds, but when it ended, a terrible sight greeted them. The entrance to the largest bunker had collapsed completely. Thousands of Valyrians who had gathered to take shelter now stood exposed, with nowhere to go. Lieutenant Krex, who had returned to the surface despite the danger, scanned the rubble with a device. There are people trapped inside too. The collapse sealed in 5,000 Valyrians and sealed out another 7,000. Can we dig them out? Asked Governor Sylph. Krex shook his head. The debris is too heavy for our portable equipment. We need industrial lifters, and there's no time to bring them from orbit. Min Park stepped forward, studying the collapsed entrance. How thick is the blockage? About 6 meters of concrete and steel, Krex said. Impossible to move by hand. Min looked at his team of humans. Maybe for most species, but not for us. He called Ji-Soo on his communicator. Captain, we need every human who can be spared at the main bunker. Now, within 30 minutes, over 100 humans had gathered at the collapsed bunker entrance. Min organized them into teams. We'll form a chain, he explained. Break down the larger pieces, pass them back. We need to clear a path at least wide enough for people to crawl through. The Confederation aliens and Valyrians watched in disbelief as the humans attacked the debris pile. Their muscles strained as they lifted chunks of concrete that the aliens couldn't budge. The work was dangerous. Sharp metal cut hands, dust-choked lungs, and the radiation continued to rise. Lieutenant Krex stood beside Governor Sylph, watching. "I've never seen anything like this," he admitted. "On my world, we would use machines for such labor." "On our world too," said the governor. "Is their planet truly so harsh that they evolved such strength?" "They call Earth a death world," Krex said. "Now I understand why. But also why they survived it." Hour after hour, the humans worked. Their faces grew streaked with sweat and blood, but they didn't stop. When one tired, another took their place. They formed a human chain, passing debris back piece by piece. Tyla, the little girl Min had carried, brought water to the workers. She wasn't afraid of the humans anymore. "Are all Deathworlders this strong?" she asked Min as he took a short break. "We don't think of ourselves as strong," Min said, drinking the water gratefully. "On Earth, this is just normal." After 6 hours of non-stop work, they broke through. A cheer went up as a small tunnel appeared in the debris. The Valyrians trapped inside began to emerge, crawling through the narrow passage to safety. As night fell, with just 24 hours left before the gamma-ray burst would hit, the situation remained desperate. Only about 60% of the population had either been evacuated to space or secured in bunkers. In the command center, Ji Shu met with all the team leaders. Everyone looked exhausted. "The Confederation ships are doing final runs," she reported. "But we still have millions of Valyrians with nowhere to go." Su Min spoke up. "I've been studying the old mining tunnels beneath the city. With some reinforcement, they could serve as additional shelter. But the radiation would still penetrate that deep," said Lieutenant Krex, who had remained despite radiation sickness beginning to affect him. Dr. Hyun, who had been quiet until now, looked up from a data pad. "Maybe not. The planet's crust is unusually rich in lead and other heavy elements. That's why it naturally has higher background radiation. But those same elements could shield against the burst." Hope returned to tired faces around the room. "Can we get enough people into these tunnels in time?" Ji Soo asked. Min nodded. "If we work through the night, yes." And work they did. As the final hours counted down, humans pushed their bodies beyond what even they thought possible. They carried children and elders who couldn't walk. They moved supplies into the tunnels. They reinforced weak spots in the underground chambers. Admiral Proxus, watching from orbit, sent a message to Captain Ji Soo. "The Confederation will not forget what humans have done here today." As the final hour approached, the last evacuation ships departed. On the surface, Min helped seal the entrances to the mining tunnels, where hundreds of thousands of Valyrians now huddled. Lieutenant Krex, too weak from radiation exposure to stand without help, watched Min work. "Why?" he asked simply. "Why risk yourselves for strangers?" Min secured the final bolt on a heavy door before answering. "Because we can. On Earth, we learned long ago that strength means nothing if not used to help others." With minutes remaining, the last humans retreated to their shuttles. As they rose through the atmosphere, they could see the first signs of the gamma-ray burst, a strange glow on the horizon. In orbit, the Dauntless and the remaining Confederation ships moved to the far side of Valyrian Prime's moon for protection. In the ship's medical bay, Dr. Hyun treated Lieutenant Krex and other aliens for radiation exposure. "Will their world survive?" Krex asked weakly. "The surface will be sterilized," Dr. Hyun said honestly. "But underground, protected by their planet's natural elements and the shields we built, millions will live to rebuild." The gamma-ray burst hit Valyrian Prime with unimaginable power. From the safety of the moon's shadow, the ship's crews watched as half the planet lit up with deadly radiation. But in the darkness, hope remained. and the galaxy had witnessed what Deathworlders could truly do when faced with a challenge that would have defeated any other species. 3 months after the gamma-ray burst hit Valurian Prime, the Grand Assembly Hall of the Confederation was filled to capacity. Representatives from all 27 member species gathered for a historic occasion. Today, Earth would be formally recognized. Ambassador Dae-Jung Choi stood straight in his formal uniform. As Earth's first official ambassador to the Confederation, he felt the weight of this moment. Next to him stood Dr. Hae Eun-yoon, a physician who had worked tirelessly treating radiation sickness among both aliens and humans after the Valurian crisis. "Are you nervous?" Hae-yeon whispered. "A little," Dae-jung admitted. "I keep thinking about how they viewed us just 6 months ago, as dangerous Deathworlders to be feared. And now we'll see." The lights dimmed, and Council Leader Zenthar stepped onto the central platform. All 6 of his arms were adorned with ceremonial bands of silver. "Today, we gather to mark a turning point in Confederation history." Zenthar's voice carried through the hall. "The crisis on Valurian Prime tested us all. It brought sorrow, but also revealed new strengths that came from an unexpected source." The crowd murmured in agreement. Against all predictions, 92% of Valurians survived the gamma-ray burst, 40 million in space aboard evacuation ships, 700 million in underground bunkers and shelters. A hologram appeared, showing before and after images of Valurian Prime. The once green world now appeared scorched and gray on the surface. "The recovery has begun," Zenthar continued. "Already, Valurians are returning to start rebuilding with Confederation aid. Their civilization will continue." From a special section near the front, Elder Nala of the Valurians stood. She looked older now, the strain of the past months evident on her face, but her eyes shone with strength. "We live because of the Confederation's help," she said, "but we must acknowledge truth. Without Earth's people, most of us would have perished. Their strength became our salvation." The assembly applauded as Zenthar raised his hands for quiet. "We have learned much from this crisis. Perhaps most importantly, we have learned that differences in biology and evolution, even those that once seemed frightening, can be the very traits that save lives." Zenthar gestured toward Dae-jung and Hae-yeon. "Would Earth's representatives please step forward?" As they walked to the center of the hall, Dae-jung noticed Admiral Proxus standing with other military leaders. The Admiral gave him a respectful nod, quite different from the suspicious glares of their first meeting. "Ambassador Choi," Zenthar said formally, "the Confederation Council has voted unanimously to offer Earth full membership, not as observers, but as equal partners in our community of worlds." Applause filled the hall. Dae-jung bowed slightly. "We are honored by this offer," he said. "Earth accepts with gratitude and hopes to contribute to the greater good of all species." Zenthar continued, "Furthermore, in recognition of the unique capabilities demonstrated during the Valurian crisis, Earth's humans will be granted the special status of Guardians of the Vulnerable, a formal role in Confederation emergency response." This announcement brought even louder applause, with many delegates standing. "This is unexpected," Dae-jung whispered to Hae-yeon. Zenthar raised a data tablet. "The formal treaty awaits your signature, Ambassador." As Dae-jung stepped forward to sign, a tall, ancient-looking alien rose from the council section. The hall immediately fell silent. Even Zenthar looked surprised. "Elder Zilthax wishes to speak," Zenthar announced with clear respect. "This is most unusual, but of course granted." Dae-jung had heard of Elder Zilthax, one of the oldest beings in the Confederation, representing a species that had been traveling the stars when humans were still using stone tools. Zilthax rarely attended public functions and almost never spoke at them. The ancient alien moved slowly to the center. Up close, Zilthax looked like a tall humanoid with gray, stone-like skin covered in glowing patterns. When the elder spoke, the voice was deep and resonant. "I have lived long enough to see 5 Deathworld species discover faster than light travel and make contact with the Confederation, Silthax said. None remained today. An uncomfortable silence fell over the hall. Each time, we feared their strength. Each time, that fear led to distrust. Each time, distrust led to conflict. Each time, we lost the opportunity to learn from them. Silthax turned to look directly at Daejung and Hae-yun. I opposed contact with humans. I advised caution and distance. I was wrong. The admission from such a revered elder caused whispers throughout the hall. What makes humans different is not merely their physical adaptations to their harsh world, Silthax continued. It is how they use those adaptations. Where previous Deathworld species saw their strength as a means to dominate, humans instinctively use theirs to protect. Silthax raised a gnarled hand toward Daejung. I formally withdraw my objection to Earth's membership and offer my own world's full support to the humans. The gesture was clearly significant, as gasps echoed around the room before erupting into the loudest applause yet. When the ceremony ended, Daejung and Hae-yun mingled with delegates at the reception. Many wanted to meet them, to express thanks or curiosity about Earth. Admiral Proxus approached with Lieutenant Krex beside him. The insect-like lieutenant still showed signs of radiation damage, but was recovering. Ambassador, Proxus said formally, I once considered your people a potential threat to the Confederation because of your Deathworld traits. I have rarely been so pleased to be proven wrong. Thank you, Admiral, Daejung replied. We understand the caution. Earth's history has taught us that strength without compassion can indeed be dangerous. The Confederation military would like to establish joint training programs, Proxus continued. Not to make our soldiers like yours. That would be biologically impossible, but to learn from your problem-solving approaches and crisis management. We would be honored, Daejung said. Lieutenant Krex stepped forward. I worked alongside Min Park during the evacuation. Is he here today? He remained on Valurian Prime, Hae-yun explained. Many humans volunteered to help with the initial rebuilding efforts. Across the room, a small Valurian child broke away from a group and ran toward them. It was Tila, the girl Min had carried to safety. She now wore a small uniform marking her as part of the official Valurian delegation. Dr. Hae-yun, she called excitedly. Look, I'm going to be a doctor too, just like you. Hae-yun knelt to speak with the child. That's wonderful, Tila. Are you studying hard? Yes, I want to help people like humans helped us. Later, as the reception continued, Daejung found himself standing beside Elder Silthax at a window overlooking the stars. Your speech was unexpected, Daejung said, but deeply appreciated. The ancient being seemed to study the stars before responding. I have witnessed much in my long life. Ambassador, rarely have I been so glad to have my predictions proven false. May I ask what changed your mind about humans? During the crisis, a human doctor, your colleague Hae-yun, treated my grandchild for radiation exposure suffered while helping evacuate Valurians, Silthax said. When I asked why she would help someone who had opposed human membership, she seemed confused by the question. She said simply, someone was hurt. Helping is what we do. The elder turned glowing eyes toward Daejung. That is when I understood. What makes Deathworlders dangerous is not their strength, but their purpose. And humanity's purpose seems to be protection, not domination. In the months that followed, the relationship between Earth and the Confederation grew stronger. The Earth Embassy on Central Station became a busy hub of cultural exchange and scientific collaboration. In the embassy's medical wing, Dr. Hae-yun established a special treatment center. Many Confederation species had medical conditions that were serious for them, but minor by human standards. With their higher resistance to radiation, toxins, and pathogens, human doctors could safely treat cases that were too dangerous for alien physicians. One day, as Hae-yun finished treating a young alien for what humans would consider a mild infection, Supreme Council member Thelos visited the medical center. Your work here has saved many lives, Thelos observed. We're just applying what we know, He Yun said modestly. That is precisely my point. What is routine knowledge for Deathworlders is revolutionary for us. Your people evolved in conditions we find nightmarish, yet you emerged not as monsters, but as helpers. 6 months after the formal alliance, Valyrian Prime held a ceremony of its own. In the center of the first rebuilt city stood a memorial garden. At its heart was a statue showing a human figure helping a Valyrian to stand. Elder Nulla, speaking to the assembled crowd, summed up what many throughout the Confederation had come to understand. The universe holds many dangers. Some worlds face more than others. The people of Earth call their world by a simple name, but we called it a death world out of fear. We now understand. Those who evolve in the harshest conditions often develop not just the strongest bodies, but the strongest capacity for compassion. They know what it means to struggle, and so they recognize the struggle in others. As Ambassador Dae Jung listened, he reflected on humanity's new place in the galaxy. Their death world advantages had found their perfect purpose, not in conquest, but in protection. The very traits that had once made others fear them now made them valued guardians. The strength of Deathworlders, it turned out, wasn't just in their bodies. It was in their hearts.